That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, trigger warning. I know we're going to be talking bad about a few players here. I know these players are going to be guys that you like. But keep in mind, I'm never the person to come out and talk about a player to trade away that you're not going to get anything for. I'm not the guy to go through and say, oh, you know what? It's probably a pretty good idea to sell on Ronald Jones right now. Because, of course, you're not getting anything for Ronald Jones. Who does that actually help? I mean, all these players I'm going to be talking about in this video, of course, their price points are going to vary from guys that, are being valued at the very top of fantasy football to guys that are 100% depth pieces on your bench that I still think we should be considering selling high. But I'm carefully picking these players and just knowing that we are going to be able to get a nice return for them. And yeah, of course, before we get into it, you know exactly what we have to do. We have to give away some Fantasy Flock Network hats. If you have not already, make sure you go down there, drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment. And that gets you entered in to automatically win a Fantasy Flock Network hat. And this first one we are going to be getting out is going to be coming from IJ Beer. Coming out, says heartbreaking loss this week. I gotta adjust the lineup. Need that flock hat. Okay, my friend, you just got a flock hat. And then our next one coming out from Scuva says appreciate how honest you are when taking L's and how you learn from them. Not a hat guy, but run me one of those. Okay, well, I'm sad to hear that you're not a hat guy. Maybe you can go through and resell it. I would have no idea what these flock hats are reselling for right now, but anyway, we'll get you that out ASAP. Just send me an email with your physical address so I can get you that shipped. And yeah, let's go through and let's start talking about these running backs. Let's lead it off with the running back that, my God, just crushed with 161 rushing yards. Someone that I hated when he was going in the first round of fantasy drafts coming into the season. Nick Chubb. Now, I know we're kind of teasing here, saying that Nick Chubb crushed with 160 rushing yards. Oh my gosh. Okay, so here, let's take a step back. Let's go back to where we were coming into the season when y'all know I was trying to convince everybody to avoid Nick Chubb in the first round. We preferred guys like Austin Eckler, Aaron Jones, Jonathan Taylor. A handful of running backs, also some wide receivers in that range. But here with Nick Chubb, the problem that we have always said is the fact that while, yes, we can sit here and we can acknowledge the fact that he is one of, if not the most talented running backs in the entire NFL. And he is running behind one of, if not the best offensive line in the entire NFL. And you would assume that you combine those two things and all of a sudden you have a number one running back overall in fantasy. You have the second best running back. No, it doesn't work that way. A big thing that we have discussed all offseason now is what you're seeing with the workload between Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb and what to expect coming into the season. Because you're looking at this and going, okay, well, Nick Chubb this past week, 161 rushing yards. Dear God. He must have just finished as a top 3 running back overall. And then at the same time, a running back that I was advocating for everybody to go out there and draft coming into the season at a massive discount when you were getting him in the 6th round sometimes, Kareem Hunt. Oh, he has 100 rushing yards less. He actually has 61 rushing yards himself. I guess maybe this is someone that you probably regretted putting in your starting lineup. Well, that's not how fantasy works. Literally, it's in the title of fantasy football. We are playing in a fantasy. We are having these made up points, and just knowing what the high value touches actually are, should definitely lead you in the direction of going with Kareem Hunt rather than Nick Chubb, because even though Nick Chubb's coming away with 161 rushing yards, exactly 100 rushing yards more than Kareem Hunt still outscored Nick Chubb this past week. And the answer is simple. A, you see that Kareem Hunt is getting the usage in the receiving game. Kareem Hunt had 5 receptions this past week. That is the same number that Nick Chubb has had throughout this entire season. Nick Chubb has had 5 receptions and 35 receiving yards this entire year. Whereas Kareem Hunt, this is someone you can see to get 4 to 5 receptions a week. And at the same time, Kareem Hunt getting usage at the goal line. So I know Nick Chubb looks fantastic. Nick Chubb's a fantastic running back. We've never said that wasn't the case. But the fact of the matter is, Kareem Hunt is the player getting the valuable touches in this offense, whereas Nick Chubb is picking up chunk yardage with unvaluable touches, which are the carries between the 20-yard lines, which we're always telling people not to overrate. So if we can try to move off of Nick Chubb, you're not getting Austin Eckler anymore. I mean, the cat's out of the bag in what you're seeing with the difference between Chubb and Eckler in a PPR format. But maybe if you add on a piece to get to that swap, maybe if you look at Nick Chubb and you go, okay, well, I'll also throw on Emmanuel Sanders. I'll throw on Kadarius Toney. I'll throw on one of these bench depth wide receivers, and then possibly we can go make that running back pivot. I think that'd be fantastic. Another running back that you could look at would be someone like Najee Harris, who here with Harris, I mean, he's a running back that is not nearly as talented as Nick Chubb, playing in an offense that doesn't have half the talent that the Cleveland Browns does, but it doesn't really matter because with Harris, he's getting every touch at the goal line. He's getting every target out of the backfield, and that's what matters for fantasy football. For the millionth time here, we aren't NFL general managers. We aren't trying to figure out who the most talented player is. Well, yes, talent definitely matters. What matters just as much, maybe even more at the running back position in particular, is the situation and the opportunity these running backs have with them. And we've said it time and time again. Nick Chubb, one of the most talented running backs in the entire NFL. But Nick Chubb, a committee running back. And I'm not going to be looking at a committee running back in the same tier as we would with Najee Harris, Austin Eckler. So I think if you could make a pivot, even if you have to add something to Nick Chubb, I definitely would. Now, our next running back here is going to be a complete tier down. The next two guys we're going to talk about, they don't have nearly as much value as Nick Chubb. Still think they're intriguing sell-high players. Next guy here is going to be Myles Gaskin. And here with Myles Gaskin, I have to admit, this is a running back that we were calling the backup running back in Miami just a week ago. Because if you go back to week 4, Malcolm Brown saw about 75% of the snaps here, where Myles Gaskin was, I mean, you could have the argument, the running back 3 on this roster. I mean, he was getting nothing here for Miami. This does change just slightly this past week. I mean, I don't want to say it changes slightly. You get Myles Gaskin with the majority of the snaps played here. He plays 37 out of 54 snaps for this Miami Dolphins offense. But keep in mind here, Myles Gaskin is, I don't want to say exactly Nyheim Hines, but that's essentially what you're looking at with Myles Gaskin. I mean, the people who wanted him to be a 3-down running back coming into the season, I'm sorry, it's just not happening. But if you're going to be looking at the carries out of the backfield, Myles Gaskin really not getting used in that way very often. I mean, here with Myles Gaskin, yes, he crushes this past week. He was a top 3 running back this week. I wasn't expecting that in the slightest. And it was 100% only from his usage in the receiving game, where he had 10 targets out of this backfield. He had 74 receiving yards. He had 2 receiving touchdowns at the same time. And yes, he played the majority of the snaps here, but that was because they got blown out of the water by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This wasn't even a real football game. If you're looking at this team so far, you've actually had 95 total rushing attempts for the Miami Dolphins. Myles Gaskin is accounting for 34 of those. So Myles Gaskin essentially getting what, like 33% of his team's rushing opportunities right now. Now, yes, he's been fantastic in the receiving game. I mean, he has had 27 targets out of this backfield. I mean, that's only behind Devontae Parker, Mike Gesicki, Jalen Waddle. But with this being said, I'm going to be saying that if you can just possibly trade away Myles Gaskin in a package and then pick up someone like Nyheim Hines, pick up someone like J.D. McKissic in return at a much lower cost, that's going to be something I'm looking to do, because if you're pulling these running backs up side by side, let me pull up the Colts stats that we have right now. Now, keep in mind, yes, the Colts have Jonathan Taylor. Yes, Jonathan Taylor is significantly better than what you're getting with other running backs like Malcolm Brown and Salvin Ahmad, but still, I mean, Nyheim Hines, 22 rushing attempts compared to Myles Gaskin's 34. Not that much of a difference. If you're looking at the usage in the receiving game, Nyheim Hines, 19 targets out of the backfield. Myles Gaskin, 26. Not that much of a gap. I mean, I think you are seeing Nyheim Hines playing a better offense at the same time. And I'm not sitting here saying that you would rather have Hines over Myles Gaskin. That's clearly not the case. But I'm more so sitting here saying that if you're going to ask the average fantasy player what tier these running backs are in, I mean, people are going to be viewing Myles Gaskin in a completely different light of what you have with Nyheim Hines and not really understanding that they're essentially the same running back, just on 2 different offenses here. I mean, let me pull up the stats on J.D. McKissic. I know with J.D. McKissic, I mean, I'm personally never really that interested. I think that if you're going to be looking at him, probably a good spot to just maybe punt running back entirely. But so far this season, you actually have 17 carries for J.D. McKissic, 18 targets out of the backfield. So very comparable with what you're getting from someone like Myles Gaskin. I think that with Gaskin, he's just needs to be used or at least viewed as a primary receiving down running back for his offense, not much else. He's not Kareem Hunt. He's not getting that elite usage in the red zone. We've seen Malcolm Brown get used in the red zone and get those high value touches near the goal line at the same time. So I know you're not getting a great return for him, but I still think the trade package that you could get is probably worth a little bit more than Myles Gaskin should be himself. Now our next running back coming in, someone that I loved coming into this season. We were viewing him in the same light as Tony Pollard, an elite handcuffed running back in his offense, Alexander Mattison. And with Alexander Mattison here, he has already made it where if you drafted him in a best ball league coming into the season, if you drafted him and you started him in the 2 weeks that Dalvin Cook was missing, he already has paid off handsomely for you. Those 2 weeks of production that you have gotten have been at such a high level that with the limited investment that you put into Alexander Mattison this year, I mean, he 100% has returned value on where you drafted him this season. I mean, back in week 3, he had 26 carries out of this backfield, 112 rushing yards. He had 8 targets out of the backfield as well, 59 receiving yards. Week 5, literally almost the exact same stat line. 25 carries out of the backfield, 113 yards, 7 targets out of the backfield, 40 receiving yards at the same time. Alexander Mattison, clearly a bell cow level running back that you can plug in as a top 5, top 8 running back, whatever you want to call him, whenever Dalvin Cook is out. Now, that has never changed with Alexander Mattison. We talked about this. We fought the haters with this coming into this season. Whenever we were saying that Mattison had this type of potential if Dalvin Cook were to miss, and people are telling me, no, Mason, no, that never has happened with Alexander Mattison. We are bringing up the stats and showing that we have seen that before. The Minnesota Vikings coaching staff, they had seen that before back in 2019. Yet, whenever you had Dalvin Cook coming back from that injury and Dalvin Cook was 100% good to go, did they go, oh my God, Alexander Mattison, he looked so good. He looked so good in this game. We have to make sure we're getting him 50% of the team's backfield touches here. We need to make sure we're getting him 40% of the backfield touches. We're going to keep Dalvin Cook healthy. We're going to make sure that we're structuring our team for the playoffs. And both these running backs are talented enough where this is going to be a running back by committee approach. No, they did not decide to do that. Instead, they went, okay, well, Dalvin Cook's healthy again. Dalvin Cook, you're seeing every single touch out of this backfield. You can never consider starting Alexander Mattison here. And even if you were to be able to talk yourself into the fact that Alexander Mattison possibly sees 25% of the snaps, 25% of the touches going forward, even in games that Dalvin Cook's 100% healthy in, he is still not someone you would be able to start with that workload. Really, the only time that I would ever be able to start Alexander Mattison is if Dalvin Cook were to miss that game, regardless of if he is getting 25% of the touches week in or week out. So Alexander Mattison, in my eyes, his value has not gone up at all from where it was coming into the season. We loved him coming into the season. I mean, we were proven right on why we loved him, but from a week-to-week standpoint now, he's the exact running back that he was before. Just because we have seen him prove that he has that elite level upside, even though we already knew that he did based on 2019, do we really need to be adjusting our priors that much? I don't think so. I think that we probably are happy that we got these 2 monstrous weeks from Alexander Mattison. Now, of course, if Dalvin Cook were to go down to an ACL, all of a sudden Alexander Mattison does become a top 6 running back in fantasy rest of season. That's why we liked him coming into the year. But I think a lot of people are now trying to convince themselves that Alexander Madison's going to be Kareem Hunt light, that he is going to be a committee running back in his backfield that you can start even when Dalvin Cook is healthy. That's not the case. He's still just a primary handcuff running back in this offense. And if we can sell him as if he is Kareem Hunt, if we can add a small wide receiver to him to get to Kareem Hunt, I think that'd be a fantastic move. Now, our next running back, someone that I also liked in fantasy drafts, and I just have to say, it's the perfect time to sell him, Antonio Gibson. Now, with Gibson, this is someone I was in love with in fantasy in 2021 before the season started, because we were looking at his profile going, great size, workhorse, bell cow level running back size. I mean, an unbelievable athletic profile, literally looked like Saquon Barkley at the NFL Combine. And go along with this, a receiver, a wide receiver in college, indicating that we know that he can catch the ball out of the backfield if the Washington coaching staff decides to use him that way. So if J.D. McKissic does get phased out of this offense, if Antonio Gibson does take a step up to be that bell cow, Christian McCaffrey, prime David Johnson level running back, he had that type of ceiling. Now, of course, that was never guaranteed, and that's why instead of Antonio Gibson being a top 5 draft pick in fantasy drafts, he was going in the middle of the second round. And yeah, I mean, with Antonio Gibson here, it's not happening. I'm the first person to come out here and admit it. We have seen him over the past 4 weeks. It's just 2 targets, 2 targets, 2 targets, 2 targets. It doesn't matter how impressive he is with the targets that he is getting in this offense. It doesn't matter how dynamic he looks on the field. Ron Rivera and this overall coaching staff, they want to continue to use J.D. McKissic as that passing down running back. So with Antonio Gibson here, I mean, this is a player that I think is a very limited ceiling option. I know that he's had 4 touchdowns in the past 3 weeks. He also had the 70-yard receiving touchdown based on the screen pass. I think that was 2 weeks ago. So if you're looking at the recent fantasy statistics by Antonio Gibson, it's not driven based on the opportunity that he has had in this offense. Rather, it's driven by the touchdown efficiency that you have seen, which we know is something that you never want to bet on maintaining over a long period. That's a very bad bet to make. So it's going to be an easy call for us here to say to go through and sell Antonio Gibson. Really don't even have to think about it that much. I would love to pivot over to get to DeAndre Swift, Jonathan Taylor, Najee Harris, really any of those running backs that we discussed. I mean, you would have to add a small piece to get to those guys. If you want to trade him for Darrell Henderson, I think that's also a move that you could look to make. I would do that straight up. We are going to update our rest of season rankings over there on Patreon today. You will find Darrell Henderson over Antonio Gibson, just because with Gibson, the usage in the receiving game is not there. Now our next running back, just going down a complete tier with what you're actually getting with the value in return. You're not going to get much, but we still have to sell him. Damien Williams. I'm surprised to see the value Damien Williams right now has in fantasy. Now, y'all know I live stream every single day. Every single day I live stream 3 to 4 hours a night. I stayed up until almost 3 a.m. last night live streaming, answering fantasy football questions for the people subscribed to this channel. And I think that gives me a better sense of the fantasy football marketplace than anybody else, let alone on YouTube, anybody else on the planet. I would make an argument that I know a little bit more about what you can realistically expect in return through trade in your fantasy league. And I have to admit, after Damien Williams, in my opinion, had an atrocious week this past week, at least from his opportunity and the role that he will have in this offense, I thought that not that many people were going to be excited about him. And all of a sudden, I mean, the trades y'all are asking about him, I'm like, what? You can get what kind of value? And I'm looking at it going, yeah, I know he had a decent day from a fantasy football standpoint. I mean, he had 16 carries, 64 rushing yards. He had 2 receptions, 20 receiving yards at the same time. But if you're looking at Khalil Herbert in this same backfield, Herbert played more snaps. He had more carries than Damien Williams. I'm not saying that he's a running back that we would rather have because he's less talented. He's not as good of a pass catcher. Williams is the guy that you want. But all of a sudden, we're talking about a 50-50 split backfield on one of the worst offenses in football with Damien Williams. Damien Williams isn't Nick Chubb. It's not a committee running back that's going to be able to overcome what you have with the fact that he's not getting every touch and just have that elite efficiency mark where he is a running back 2 every week. No, Williams is like a low-end running back 3 for me this week. I promise you, if you ask me in the live stream, Mason, should I start Damien Williams or player X? Mason, should I go with Damien Williams, player X? We're going with player X. I'm Damien Williams right now at this point. I think that you want to be rostering both Herbert and Williams on your team, but at the very bottom of your roster, knowing that if the other guy gets hurt, all of a sudden you are looking at a 3-down running back in the Chicago Bears backfield. But yeah, this is a split backfield right now between some of the worst running backs in the NFL and one of the worst offenses in the NFL. Now, our last running back that we are going to include on this video is just me giving an update, because this past week we said to sell high. Then as soon as Calvin Ridley got listed as out, we said, nope. You hold on to him. And then we're going to be selling high after he plays the New York Jets. Cordarrelle Patterson. Now with Patterson, he comes out here, crushes the Jets just as you would expect. I mean, as soon as Calvin Ridley is listed as out, we have to say, okay, well now all of a sudden he's a running back that's going to get a ton of usage in his offense, given the fact that they just have no other options, no other weapons here. And yeah, he comes out, gets 9 targets out of the backfield, 14 carries at the same time. These are both career highs for him, at least career highs for Atlanta. I shouldn't say career highs, season highs. And so far this season, he's averaging 8.2 carries a game. He's averaging 6.2 targets a game, which is a very impressive mark. I know the carries don't necessarily look great, but the targets per game is awesome. He had over 100 yards this week against the New York Jets. But with Calvin Ridley coming back in, with Kyle Pitts taking that step up, I think the overall volume for Cordarrelle Patterson is going to go down, as well as having Mike Davis in this offense. Now, of course, I'm not telling you to go sell Cordarrelle Patterson for just anybody. Go get Darrell Henderson for him. Go get one of those running backs that we know is going to be a 3-down prototypical guy in one of the best offenses in football, because you can go and realistically expect that right now. I mean, if you're looking at Cordarrelle Patterson, he's a top 5 running back in fantasy right now in points scored. Unbelievable to think about. I know a lot of people want to get extremely excited because they picked him off the waiver wire. And yes, you should be very excited. I mean, you had a great call. I mean, we actually talked about him as one of the top waiver wire pickups as soon as he had that strong performance against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But still, I just think projecting long-term opportunity is going to be a little bit safer with another running back like Darrell Henderson, even though Patterson's been fantastic over the past few weeks. Now, thank you. I really hope y'all have enjoyed this video. Make sure you go down there, drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. As soon as you do that, you get entered in to win a Fantasy Flog Network hat. And also, make sure that you come out to the live stream. We're live streaming every single night, so just hit that bell next to the subscribe button so you know when we go live. And yeah, that's all I got for y'all, and have a great day.